Are you seeing films and TV to distract yourself? The things you're watching right now may be poisoning your mind. As a filmmaker for years, I was watching everything. Netflix, Prime Video, HBO, Disney Plus, Mubi, Paramount Plus, you name it, I had the subscription. I was getting invited to press screenings, seeing films before they were being released, just back to back to back to back. Basically, I watched a film a day for most of my life. After I had taken a break from all of that, I came back and I was shocked to find what was being released nowadays. Could it be that the thing I love the most has been corrupted by evil all along? I took an honest look at some of my favorite films and I realized that beyond the great cinematography, acting and writing, there was something else going on here. There were messages being promoted and thoughts planted, and my feelings were provoked in ways that took me away from who I really was. It may sound extreme, but that could also be happening to you. The things I'm about to share with you have been difficult for me. In the next couple of minutes, we are going to be exposing the damage your favorite film franchises have caused and find out if your favorite films have been lying to you. I'm also going to be sharing how I choose the films and TV shows to watch that are really good for me. Let's get into it. One of the first films ever made consists of one shot. That of a train arriving in a train station. Back in 1896, this 50-second clip had audiences just going crazy. It was a life-size train moving into the direction of the audience. People jumped up, went to the back of the theater in shock and terror. People had never seen a film in their life, and this one caused actual fear and even panic. Flash forward to 2024, we are being bombarded with images all of the time, and the visual literacy of regular people is actually quite sophisticated nowadays. The dark side of that is that young people especially are being shaped into presenting themselves a certain way on camera. While of course most of social media is moving away from what is good and natural for us, what role do the more traditional mediums of film and TV play within that? In my opinion, films and TV can be almost even more sinister than social media. Let me explain. You've probably heard the phrase, they don't make them like they used to before. I've always had a negative reaction hearing this because it just sounds like typical old head talk about everything was better in the past. So we could easily look at that and go, nowadays, the only difference is that there's just more content. But I think there's another problem. For the past years, Western society has drifted into all kinds of extremism. While social media content and the news state clear messages, films and TV have the ability to communicate more subtly because they're art and they're entertainment and fun. I think that the kind of extremism that has taken over Western culture is shaping film and TV. And within that, these great mediums have become much more evil and dangerous than they've ever been before. And I'm afraid that the narratives of popular film and TV are shaping us into believing lies. Some of you remember that the only way to watch films back in the day was just to go to the cinema or rent them at home or even catch them later on in TV, the same way we watched any TV show. This kind of distribution limited the amount of films and TV shows we were watching because, to be honest, the price to see something was actually much higher back then. Today, you pay somewhere around $5 to $15 to watch anything you want on a platform, and suddenly you become less picky but at the same time more demanding of specific types of content. Because back then, when you saw like 4 films a year in theaters, it was all about seeing the most spectacular film or the most award-winning film. Nowadays, we are choosing what to watch differently. The apps we have for Netflix, for example, on our devices are right next to the apps of YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. If people are watching a 2-hour film or a 10-hour season, if it doesn't hold their attention, it's right alongside competing with the short-form content. I want to clarify, I'm not saying that short-form content is bad and long-form content is good. Obviously, there's still a place for both on YouTube, for example. I'm just saying that when it comes to being distracted for a short amount of time through a 10-second video, it doesn't really bring out our best interests, only our most primitive and simple interests. If you look through the films that not only are the most successful, but especially the films that resonated with culture online the most in the last couple of years, it's some pretty pretty radical stuff. Not only are these films told in a really artistic and challenging way, a lot of these films are also challenging us by presenting us some complicated moral belief systems that are really quite unclear. Just look up the most popular HBO or A24 productions right now. You can find a lot of provocative and complicated content that focuses on characters behaving in an amoral way, and these films and shows have huge fan bases, especially by young people. So this kind of radical extremism on the creative and narrative side has ultimately become mainstream. A lot of mainstream Hollywood blockbuster popcorn films are directed through the male gaze. This is a term to describe when human characters are being objectified in films. This is happening to men as well as women, but the portrayal of women by men in films is especially problematic. Let me explain. We have a part in us that wants to see artificiality when we go into a film. It's the reason why we want to see something spectacular, something creative, be taken into imaginative worlds and see something that is kind of larger than our everyday lives. A good example of this are the films by Christopher Nolan. They are always about crazy sci-fi concepts that are grounded in real psychology and emotion. If we take away the moral, psychological and emotional part of these films, what we are left with is something empty. This is what describes a lot of these contemporary blockbusters. Most directors working today are male, and if films cater to our more primitive needs and not to the psychology, emotions behind the story, we end up with so many action, science fiction, fantasy, comedy films that end up sexualizing and objectifying female characters. Why is that so damaging to us as an audience? Objectifying characters is always bad writing, and objectifying people in front of the camera is always bad directing. But it's also evil, because it lies to us. Of course, films sell us on ideas that aren't real, and they combine it with emotional stories and spectacle that excites us. If you're throwing objectification and sexualization of women in the mix, you're basically being provoked to have perverted thoughts without your permission. This shouldn't be happening in any capacity, but you can definitely see this happening in mainstream pop culture more and more in a way that's totally in your face. Blockbusters aren't the only films that are making us more insensitive and numb. What can be even more damaging are films that go, just because we're art, we can show anything. That's not the purpose of filmmaking. Just because you can show something doesn't mean you should show something. The purpose of films are having the audience's best interest in mind. Without that, it becomes a gateway not only for a waste of time, but also for ideas that can truly damage us. There are so many arthouse films out there that are disguised as critically acclaimed works of art that show straight up pornographic content, unspeakable violence, and visualization of amoral behavior in any kind of way. And film festivals themselves are giving stage to some of the most evil and irritating imagery out there. Year after year, there are these films that are critically acclaimed just because they are difficult to watch, and cinephiles and critics and tastemakers kind of pride themselves on this elitism. There are filmmakers, especially in Europe, that have branded themselves and built whole careers just by showing us awful things, and people see these films and go away thinking that they had like this great emotional experience because the filmmaking, when in reality you've just seen awful things for 2.5 hours. I also want to specifically point out that subtle provocation is also dangerous. If you create a cinematic world where everything looks nice and feels good, and you throw in weird ideas and things that people do that make bad stuff not as bad as it actually is, it's actually even more damaging because you're being lied to without you even realizing it. They say, oh, I resonated with this film so much and it's so personal and so great, when in reality it's just showing characters that are being awful to other people and getting away with it. That's not reality. In the past 10 years, well-written and challenging TV shows have become more popular. And that in turn has the mainstream audience become more open to artsy filmmaking. That explains the success of a studio like A24, for example. I love some of the A24 films. At the same time, they've released some of the most demonic films of the last couple of years. Again, I think that A24 films have great craft behind them and the presentation is amazing, but they also distribute so many films that have absolutely pointless vulgarity, perversion and demonic content that seems more easily swallowable for most audiences because they have an A-list cast. I had never realized how extreme some of these award-winning and successful and beloved films were until I look back on them through my renewed perspective as a Christian. Talking about the more broader cultural context of all of that is far beyond my expertise. I can just say that to me personally, there are a lot of films that I admired for their filmmaking, but have ultimately catered to my bad sides and made me think about evil things in a broader sense in a way that's like, it can't be that bad. That's why I know that for me personally, it's important to be cautious about what I see and not get blinded by great filmmaking, artistry and craft. I'm not here to say that any film and TV show should be family entertainment. Films are about life and evil is a part of life, and that's why we have to show it in an honest way. But filmmaking should never ever be unfiltered. I'm saying this because it actually is not able to be unfiltered. Everything you see in a film has gotten through the hands of tens of hundreds of people, so every creative decision in a film is a conscious one. Things are rarely a coincidence. Violence and sex are both part of reality, but they're different when it comes to presenting them in a film. If I show a man getting killed on screen, it won't really affect you in a personal way because stuff like this is so far away from most of our everyday lives. If you show two people sleeping with each other on screen, there's no way to show that in a film without it becoming some kind of perversion. Even if it just for a moment, it changes the way you view another human. These things are much closer to our everyday life. That's why can become much more damaging than showing graphic content of any other kind. That's why in my opinion, sexual content is something that no film ever really should explicitly show. Showing violence in films can also be damaging and disturbing, but it's much more hard. And I think that violence and any form of graphic imagery is like a dial. It should be turned cautiously and be serving the narrative. If a film is showing you graphic imagery out of nowhere without any plausible reason, it's not respecting you as an audience member. Great cinematography and acting can fool you into watching garbage without even realizing it. Stay away from films that disrespect you. There's so much great cinema for you waiting to be seen. I just hope you recognize the effect graphic imagery has on us and the dangers if it goes unchecked. Nowadays, when I decide what films to see, my focus is much more on the story and narrative. A great way of knowing what kind of content I'm getting myself into is the parental guidance section on IMDb. Each film has that. It's a very specific list of all the graphic moments in a film, and it's just a great resource for you to help you choose better films. After watching this, some of you are probably going, nah, Alex, he's just weak. I'm a grown man. One film that shows two people sleeping with each other or has inappropriate jokes or lots of gore, it can't harm me. Trust me, I've been there. This video is coming from a personal place of things I learned through my relationship with my fiance. All my life I wanted to be a part of film culture, and because of that I was holding on to idols that were rooted in evil. This had a damaging effect on our relationship. Being here, making this video for you is only possible because of the woman by my side that has been so patient with me and my growth as a man. I want to encourage you to be more cautious about the content you see, because when you are, I promise you, you're going to be more at peace and more in tune with your thoughts and feelings. That's basically what the Bible and my faith in God has made me tap into more. I just realized how much of the things that are going on inside of me are reactive and not proactive. There's enough evil and hard stuff to be dealt with in real life anyway. I want filmmaking to be a place of refuge, of safety, security, a place to dream and wonder and open my heart and reconnect with the good and amazing films life and the world has to offer. I love cinema, and it's hard sometimes to say I'm not going to be seeing this film even if it's by a great director, but what you gain if you restrict yourself in that way is much greater than anything or feeling or thought a film could give you. I just hope that by looking deep into the thing we love, filmmaking, cinema, looking deep into the good and bad of it actually deepens our understanding and appreciation for great art and entertainment. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'll hope to have you back in the next one.